Hello and welcome to Spokane County Spotlight. I'm County Commissioner Chris Jordan, representing District 1 in West Spokane. For today's program, I've invited a special guest to join me. He's a father, a businessman, a fellow baseball fanatic, and a leader with the Spokane Indians Baseball Club. Who else but our own Washington Senate Majority Leader, Andy Billig. Thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure, thank you.
Good to have you. So if I'm doing my math right, you are in your 14th year representing Spokane's 3rd legislative district in Olympia. You're the majority leader of the state senate, a big job, and earlier this year you shared the news that you will not be seeking another term. Your leadership will undoubtedly be missed, but backing up, can you tell our viewers a bit about your background and what led you to step up and serve the community in this way?
Well, just thanks so much for this opportunity to talk and to reflect a little bit. So I came to Spokane 32 years ago. It seems like it was yesterday, but 32 years ago, and I came to work for the Spokane Indians. I was the general manager and then became the president. And I love my job. I get to run a professional baseball team. It's an incredible community event every night that we have a game out there. And so it couldn't be a better job. But after it was about 17, 18 years, I thought, I want to do something additional. And I really wanted to do it in some form of community service. And an opportunity came up to run for the State House of Representatives. And I had never run for anything since 4th grade. I ran for class representative, and I lost that election.
Oh, well.
Yeah, it was a tough one. Yeah. And but I ran, and I thought, and I was a political science major in college. I grew up just near Washington D.C., so I always sort of had politics in my blood, but never thought I would run for office.
Right.
But I really saw a need in the community, and I thought my background may be able to help to address some of those needs. And lo and behold, I won. And 14 years later, it was a really good run.
So second time's a charm on the campaign.
There you go. That's the lesson.
Good. Well, it's baseball season, of course, and I know we'll talk more about that. But for folks who may not follow all of the legislative ups and downs, what's the majority leader? What's the job? And what has it meant to have a Washington Senate majority leader from Spokane in Eastern Washington?
Yeah, well, it's really great to have the majority leader to be from your area, wherever that may be, but Spokane's had this strange sort of connection to the majority leader job. So I've been the majority leader for the past 6 years. Lisa Brown, our current mayor, was the majority leader she was in office for 20 years, I think the majority of that time as majority leader, and even before her was Jim West. So Spokane has had this sort of hold on that job, and I think we could all just pretty much say that we should always have a majority leader
I would second that statement.
Spokane. But so what's the job? I mean, the first thing is, if you're the majority leader, the first thing for me is that I'm the senator from Spokane.
Right.
So whatever my role in Olympia, I'm representing Spokane. That's job number one, no matter what. But then the majority leader is also the caucus leader. So I'm the Democratic caucus leader. And then because the Democrats have the majority, then I am the majority leader. So I'm elected majority leader by the Senate Democrats, and then become the majority leader because we have the majority. And so there's a lot being a caucus leader. It's sort of like being a coach. It's a lot of motivating and a lot of comforting and all of the things that go along with helping a group of people to be successful. And then there's sort of another role, because you're functionally the head of the Senate.
Right.
So things like setting the agenda, the operations of the Senate. So even like the HR thing, I'm really proud of some of the things that we've done related to transparency and just the how the Senate and the legislature interacts with the public. And then I think the last thing is, as the majority leader, sort of along with the Speaker of the House and the governor, sort of part of this sort of unofficial executive committee that helps to make big decisions about the state. And during COVID, that was particularly relevant, and we often had meetings for the three of us. But even outside of COVID, when big decisions would come up, the three of us would talk and try to figure out the best path forward.
Well, as Senator and Majority Leader, you certainly had a big hand in many issues affecting counties from our region. or counties and our region, from infrastructure and transit to childcare. And even this year, your office was instrumental in helping the county secure funds from the Climate Commitment Act for energy efficiency improvements at our public works building. So thank you for that. And as you look back on your public service, what policy accomplishments are you most proud of?
Well, I always lead with Spokane. So it's some of the Spokane things that I'm most proud of. And particularly because so many of those things came from the community. Legislators very rarely just have some great idea that turned into a bill. It's somebody from the community comes forward and says, hey, I think here's an idea. And the Schoolhouse Rock, How a Bill Becomes a Law, one of my favorite videos of all time. You know, I always tell people that's nonfiction. That's actually how it works. Because the first line is somebody back home says there ought to be a law. And so I think about that a lot. And one of the first big bill I passed my first year in the legislature was a bill that eliminated phosphorus from lawn fertilizers, so it would prevent toxic algae blooms that were developing in the Spokane River and in other waterways. And so I think the work along about the Spokane River, I'm really proud of. Some infrastructure projects, particularly the U District Bridge. That was one that I worked hard on that I think is paying off in a big way with economic development and connectivity. The medical school certainly is a big one. I played a role in that. And then on statewide issues, you know, we work on 10,000 different issues, but it may be scary for people to know. We only really know 4 or 5 of them in depth. And there are a couple of the issues I worked on, K-12, early learning, and we made big progress in early learning and childcare, proud of that. Another area I worked on was voting access. So like automatic voter registration, 16 and 17-year-old pre-registration, same-day voter registration, and I was one of the people to help pass that package. And then one last one that's a little random is I'm the legislative expert on sustainable aviation fuels.
Someone's got to be.
Somebody's got to do that job. And it's really interesting. Washington's a leader in this space, and I'm quite proud of the work that we've done over the last really 12 years. And Washington should be proud of its role on sustainability generally, but we're also in this little niche of sustainable aviation fuel leaders, and really proud of that work.
Well, thanks for all of your work over the years. And I'm wondering, you know, from your perspective in the legislature, what are some of the biggest challenges and opportunities that you see for county governments over the next couple of years? I know you deal with cities, you deal with tribes, you deal with universities, you deal with many stakeholders, but what do you see for counties in the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, you may be able to answer that question better than I can. I'll say, you know, one of the things that I appreciate about Spokane County is that there's a really good relationship with the legislature, and I've appreciated in the time that you've been in office and all of the other commissioners to have that positive working relationship. And so, like we do, as I think legislators who are doing their jobs well, it's really for us to listen to the counties or the cities or whoever we're working with to say, what is it that you need? But I think one of the revenue is having enough revenue for counties or for cities to be able to deliver the services that are needed to the citizens of the county. I think that's probably the biggest challenge, and because of a 1% cap on property taxes, there's a constraint. So, you know, there's increased need. There's, you know, you want to retain really good people, so you want to pay a little bit more to be able to attract and retain the best possible county employees to serve the people. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge, and trying to figure out exactly how best to help counties to have the resources is probably. I think another issue that I'm sure you're dealing with and that all counties and the state needs to deal with is in the criminal justice system. Just making sure, particularly with indigent defense, and making sure that everybody has a path to real justice in the criminal justice system. I think the state and the counties do a lot of good things, but it's just an area we can get better, and the state has a big role to play supporting counties in that work.
Well, the work will go on, I know.
Yes.
So as we've previously discussed in my work before running for office, I was at the Attorney General's office and handled child safety cases, so saw many families in crisis in our community facing homelessness, addiction, untreated mental health issues, and much more. And so you and I both share a commitment to kids and families as a priority and helping them thrive. So I'm curious, over your career, why have you felt that that's such an important area of focus and investment?
Yeah, you come to different issues of working in the legislature for different reasons, because it can be something that's important to your district or something based on your background. And I really came to early learning and childcare because it became clear to me that high quality early learning and childcare was just so important. And we sometimes talk about, oh, it's a double benefit policy and you get benefit this way and this way. But early learning and childcare is this rare quadruple benefit policy. So it's good for the parents because they can go to work, their kids have a safe place to go, so parents feel secure leaving their kids there. Helps businesses to be successful and organizations because they can get employees to come to work and to be focused on their work. Really important, obviously, it helps the kids. And we know there's a ton of data that especially if it's high quality childcare, you can change the trajectory of a child's life. And it's something I saw, particularly when I was doorbelling, when I was first running in Spokane, about poverty here. And the best way to break the cycle of poverty is high quality early learning and childcare. And then lastly, fourth benefit is it's good for taxpayers. Because we know for high quality early learning and childcare that kids grow up to make more money, pay more taxes, less likely to be in jail, less need for health interventions. And all of those things are good for a community, a society, and ultimately good for the bottom line for taxpayers.
Well, a lot of progress has been made in the Working Connections program over your time, so thanks for your leadership on that issue. And of course, we're having this conversation in June. That means it's also Pride Month in our region, where we are celebrating inclusion, equal rights, and equal dignity of all people, including our LGBTQ plus neighbors. And this past legislative session, Senator Billig, you sponsored Senate Bill 5917, which passed and expanded the definition of hate crimes to include defacement of private and public property. So can you talk about why you felt that push was so important and why you led the charge?
Yeah. Well, again, this was a bill that came from the community, and there was, unfortunately, last year, the Pride crosswalks in Perry and downtown were defaced, and everybody called it a hate crime. And it actually wasn't, and we discovered a loophole. And it was actually City Councilman Zach Sapone who called me and said, hey, this is not a hate crime, and we should close that loophole. And what had happened was it was a quirk. I don't think it was done on purpose, but because of the way the law was written, that if you were to deface with hateful intent, do a symbol or words on the side of a business, that would be a hate crime. But if you did that on the side of a school or at City Hall, that wasn't a hate crime. Doesn't make any sense. So we proposed this bill. It was a rather simple bill because it was just making one small change. And we were able to pass it in that same year in this short session. And unfortunately, it was timely because there has been more hateful defacement of those Pride crosswalks. But this is broader. I mean, certainly important for that, and that was the inspiration, but broader than just that. And again, just a great example of the community saying, hey, as my legislator, can you help us with this? And really one of the fulfilling parts of the job is to be able to do that research and then say, yes, we can help.
Well, it's been great to see community kind of rallying and coming together to continue to repaint that and send that message. So I also appreciate your co-sponsorship of Senate Bill 5427. That's the hate crimes hotline law. I'm pleased to share that the county sheriff's office is in communication with the state about the possibility of Spokane County becoming the Eastern Washington pilot county for that hotline as it rolls out over the next couple of years. So really hopeful that we'll have more tools available soon in the community to respond to and track hate incidents going forward.
Yeah, that's such great to hear, and really appreciate the county and Sheriff Knowles' involvement with that.
Absolutely. It's also the most wonderful time of the year, baseball season, of course. And you've been, as you referenced, a baseball executive in the community with the Spokane Indians Club. And my grandfather, Jack Spring, as you know, was a pitcher in the majors and played for the Indians for a while. So on a personal level, my family was very touched when the team displayed his name on the stadium's Rim of Honor a couple years before he passed away. That talent turned out not to be genetic for me, sadly, but I'm curious what led you to that line of work, and who is your favorite player of all time?
Well, first let me say that it was really an honor to be able to get to know your grandfather a little bit over the years as we did different events with Spokane Indians alumni. And he was also much more than just a former baseball player. He was an high school athletic director and really served the community in a great way. So it was fitting to honor him out there. So my favorite players, growing up, I grew up in Maryland, so Cal Ripken was absolutely my favorite player. But I was, in my...
It's defensible.
Yeah, but I'll mention a couple of former Spokane Indians players. One of my, I think it was my second year, Carlos Beltran played for the Spokane Indians. 17-year-old.
Nice.
He was dominating.
I bet he lit it up.
You could just tell he was special, and he was 3 or 4 years younger than everybody else. And Jerkson Profar, who's still playing for the Padres. He really was a great, fun, young, talented player to watch here as well.
Well, it's Edgar Martinez for me, number 11, the epitome of excellence and loyalty. How'd you get into baseball in the first place?
So I went to the baseball winter meetings, and there's a job fair there.
Oh, really? Wow.
And that was in 1991. And I worked for this small business in Washington, D.C. during college and after college. And I thought, this small business thing is kind of fun, but I wish I could do it in sports.
Right.
So I went to the winter meetings. I got hired for the Hawaiian Winter Baseball League.
Yes.
And I got this great training, and I went to Hawaii, and that league folded before we ever played a game. And they shipped my car back to Oakland, and Bobby Brett, who's the majority owner in Spokane, he was one of the investors in that league. And he said, well, we don't have any jobs open, but why don't you drive through Spokane and you can do an informational interview? And Spokane's not really on the way from Oakland to Maryland, but I had nothing else to do. So I stopped, and about 2 days before I got here, the general manager resigned, and Bobby offered me that job, and been here ever since.
So it started just going to a job fair.
Yes.
Just showing up.
Yes. And I thought I'd be here for 2 or 3 years and then move on to something else, but I just love the city, love the region, and love my job.
Awesome. Well, as a citizen, one of the things I've really appreciated about the club is the partnership with the Spokane tribe, of course, and many people in the community know that, but not everybody does. And you and I had the opportunity last year to join the Spokane tribe for a cultural salmon release into the Little Spokane River on the Glen Tana Conservation Area and present some funding from the legislature. There were numerous representatives from the ball club there. Can you talk a little bit about how that relationship came to be with the Spokane tribe and its significance?
Yeah. I think in maybe my whole professional career, sports and legislature, the most fulfilling and rewarding project I ever worked on was this partnership with the Spokane tribe. And we went out to Welpinit in 2005, and we said, we're going to be changing our logo. And we had a relationship with the tribe, and we had sort of taken the approach with their blessing to say, we're just not going to do any Native American imagery. So the logo, we're not going to have a mascot, we're not going to do a, chop, chant, none of that stuff. And they always very much appreciated that. And so we were just going to do a check-in meeting. Hey, we're going to do a new logo. Unless you tell us something different, we'll probably just stay away from anything Native American. And out of that meeting came this idea about, what if we partnered? What if we did a first-in-the-nation partnership where the namesake of this team, the tribe of Spokane Indians is the namesake of this team, and the team actually came together. And we started talking, and they talked about their goals. And one of their goals was to get some recognition of their history, and a really high goal was to preserve the language.
Right.
So what if we did 2 logos? What if we did a logo in Salish and a logo in English?
Right.
And it just blossomed from there. That first meeting was like one of the best aha moments in a meeting that I've just ever participated in. And about a year later, we rolled out this identity that's in English and Salish. We're the only professional baseball team, maybe the only professional sports team in America, that doesn't have English
Right.
on the front of our jersey because we have Salish, the language of the Spokane
Yeah.
Indians. Many of the signs around Vista Stadium are in English and Salish, and we have a partnership to help to raise awareness and to honor the history and the culture of the Spokane tribe. And I'm grateful to the tribal elders and tribal members who were a part of that first meeting and have been part of the partnership ever since. And
So am
really
I
feel glad about it.
Am I mistaken that Ribby, the red band trout, also came out of that
So
effort?
part of
I brought a prop today for the interview, by the way.
The Red Band campaign came a few years later, but
Okay.
really as part of this whole idea of, you know, what are things that we
Right.
as a region and the tribe feel is important, and preserving habitat and protecting the Spokane River is such a priority for them that was sort of a follow-on to the partnership.
Well, my hat gets a lot of use, so I enjoy it.
I love it. Thank
And
you.
as you know, Senator, Spokane County owns a Vista Stadium where hundreds of thousands of Spokanites enjoy taking in minor league baseball over the spring and summer each year. And the county recently invested, along with Spokane Valley and other partners, in ballpark upgrades to improve our stadium, meet Major League Baseball requirements, and ensure that minor league baseball remains a part of the fabric of our community for years to come. So it's an exciting time. But can you share a bit about what these improvements look like and what citizens can expect if they decide to go out and enjoy some games this summer?
Yeah, well, Spokane County and the community should really be commended for keeping this 63-year-old stadium preserved and alive and functioning, and not just functioning, but it's one of the best minor league baseball
Right.
stadiums in the country. It did have sort of some infrastructure problems that Major League Baseball has these standards that says you can't have a team if you don't meet certain standards related to the player facilities and fan amenities. And so that was the genesis, as you mentioned, for these improvements. And so I think the biggest thing that fans will get out of all of these improvements is that this team will be here
Right.
now, and while other communities are actually losing their teams
Right.
because the communities haven't stepped up to do the improvements. But there are going to be some tangible things
Right.
besides just keeping the stadium alive. You'll see a new video board, which we've not ever had a
Right.
video board
Yeah.
at Vista Stadium, and that will change. And then just throughout the stadium, there are going to be upgrades. When you go into the bathroom, when you go into the Champions Club behind home plate up at the top. But a lot of the improvements are going to be things that are sort of a little bit behind the
Right.
scenes. But that was needed because those were all 63-year-old facilities.
Right.
And I just really appreciate the county, the valley, and the other partners who really stepped up, including our ownership group that contributed as well. We're not quite all the way there on the fundraising, but we're getting close to being able to call it done, and hopefully get over that last hurdle soon.
Good. Well, we are on KSPS, not ESPN.
Yeah.
So kind of pivoting back
Yeah.
to your, as you kind of close out your time as majority leader, what has it meant to you to kind of bring your business experience to that job in the Senate?
Yeah, you know, I sometimes joke about the similarities between the Senate and the legislature and baseball. And it's never more evident than on the first day of the legislative session. It feels like opening day
Right.
of baseball because you have the Star-Spangled Banners
Yeah.
and the flags and all of the pomp and circumstance. It's also like opening day in that everybody's bills are still alive.
Right.
And
Hope springs eternal
Hope
on
springs
opening
eternal.
day.
And baseball,
Everybody's in first place.
Exactly, exactly. And then all of their hopes are dashed
Wow.
later on, both in the legislature and not all of them.
Right.
So there are some sort of symbolic
Yes.
similarities.
Yes.
But in terms of the skills, it is a lot of the same skills because it's a lot of communication.
Right.
And it's really a lot of, you know, maybe at the ballpark we call it customer service and we call it constituent service.
Right.
But centering, so for the baseball team, we center the guest.
Right.
And we have a wide definition of guest.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fan that comes out, that's a visiting team that's there, that's a delivery person that's
Right.
dropped in something else. And I took that same philosophy about make it all about the guest and said make it all about the guest, the
Right.
constituent,
Right.
being one of the key, but also fellow legislators, other stakeholders, other elected officials, and to treat them with what we call the wow factor, is to go to the level they expect and then go one step further.
Nice.
And try to really translate that. And I think the other sort of big sort of philosophical, just the role of being a CEO of a business, and then the role of being the majority leader. You're running an organization. I mean, one has a budget in the millions, the other has a budget in the billions.
Yes.
But the fundamentals are very much the same, and it really comes down to just how you treat people and having those relationships.
So as we close out here, looking forward perhaps to the future of how the legislature works and gets things done for those constituents, what hopes do you have in terms of how that institution operates going forward?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that's happened over the last few years is the legislature has gotten a lot more diverse, and it's something that we've tried to do intentionally in terms of candidates that get recruited, in terms of staff that we hire, and it's gotten so much better as we've done that, because the more diverse perspectives you get, the better policy you make. And especially when you're making policy for 8 million people in Washington State, that you want all of those people to have representation. So that's one thing that I hope that trend continues, that we keep that diversity of views, and not just diversity in maybe some of the traditional, but diversity in types of careers, that backgrounds that people have, diversity in age. We have a candidate that's 29 years old. That's like having, you want older people with lots of that history, but you also want younger people. Think of all of the young constituents that should be represented there. You want people of different races and backgrounds. So I hope that continues. The other thing that I think we've changed in the last few years that we need to keep doing better on is transparency and the way that constituents can interact. Of course, COVID was terrible in so many ways, but for the legislature, one of the silver linings is that we really perfected the remote testimony. And that has continued. And for people from Eastern Washington, from our districts, it's really important. And not having to drive 5 hours to go testify and have your voice to be heard. So there's additional steps we can take there. So I hope that continues. But most of all, I hope the legislature just keeps being thoughtful and deliberative and keep making progress for our state.
Well, thanks for your work making that happen. And of course, we could talk about baseball and government all day, I'm sure. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I just want to thank you, Senator Andy Billig, for all your years of dedication to the community, for your leadership on behalf of the citizens of Spokane. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me here.
You bet. I'm County Commissioner Chris Jordan. Thanks for joining us today on Spokane County Spotlight.